Hey, hi there, guys. Warren here. Good morning. I'm down close to the airport and the airbase, so occasionally you might hear a jet or two going by. But today I want to talk about happiness, and happiness in the construct of Dr. Arthur C. Brooks and science. And pretty simple. Happiness is not a destination. Shocker, I know. Shocked me too. But no, first out of the gates is that happiness is not a destination. It is a choice, kind of like a skill. Things we have to work on every day. And those are the things, the nuances that make up the ingredients, again, according to Dr. Brooks. And those are purpose, satisfaction, and enjoyment. Purpose, satisfaction, and enjoyment. And there you have it. Pretty short episode. All done. Thanks for stopping by. But no. Breaks says the philosopher and theologian Thomas Aquinas, because he says, "Sit still, Dr. Brooks. There are 4 impediments to your science." Really? Do say. Indeed. They are money, prestige, pleasure, and money, prestige, pleasure, power. Money, prestige, pleasure, and power. Really? Do tell. Well, that's where the conflict comes in. Because to get to satisfaction, enjoyment, and purpose, you have to get past money, power, pleasure, and prestige. And that's what I want to talk about today, is that conflict. And let's start with money, because there is a myth that money is the root of all evil, and that is incorrect. It is the love of money that is the root of all evil. And that brings me to several questions. Why do we continue to chase? And that leads to how much is enough. And you say, Warren, come on, those are all subjective questions, and they are. And there are a lot of nuances built into them. But just ask yourself, how much do you need to retire if you have a family and you're still providing for that family? And once you find that number, that reasonable number, then how much do you need? And I know life gets a vote and people have to burn the candle on both ends. I know that. I give. Gig workers, for example. But you ask anyone that is uber wealthy, well, not anyone and not everyone, but it's been said, and I believe it, and I think most people, most reasonable people believe it, that uber rich folks aren't necessarily happy. And because happiness is not a destination, then what we should try to do is not chase that destination, that illusion, but do the things within the nuances, within the ingredients, to find purpose, enjoyment, I'm distracted. Someone is behind the camera visiting. But satisfaction, purpose, satisfaction, and enjoyment. How much do we need to get to that? And to get to those, we need money. There is no denying that either. We need money to get to those things. But we have to consider also that some of those things, as a matter of fact, two of those I think are fleeting, can be fleeting, and that is satisfaction and enjoyment. I think once we find purpose, we find it. But I think the other two are fleeting. So within that, we have to find the balance of what really matters. And go after just those within those two. But yeah, money can't get to the other three without it. But it doesn't make us happy, or even in some cases, happier. It makes things easier, but not necessarily happier. And then there's power. And we see enough of that one. And in the chase for power, we often come in contact with dark triads, narcissists, psychopathy, and Machiavellianism. So that's actually the helicopter from the original Magnum PI. I don't know if you caught it in the shot, but that's the original one. But yes, power often involves having to deal with dark triads, narcissists who everything is about them, psychopathy where people just don't care about the harm that they cause others and the pain that they actually go through. And then there's Machiavellianism, where dark triads will do almost anything and everything to get what they want. And those three characteristics are dangerous, but in terms of power, often you have to deal with those. Or it is argued that to be, I'm not necessarily agreeing with this, but it's argued that to be overly ambitious and successful as a leader, you have to have one or two of those dark triad traits. Like, for instance, CEOs of big corporations, large corporations. So they're not necessarily always bad or all bad. They're just in aggregate and over time never being anything other than the three can be problematic. But people chase power because they usually have one of those traits, and it's just innate for them to want to be in charge of others or to be able to exude power. And then others could give you know what about power. yours truly. I don't necessarily like to exude authority, and I'm not a fan of authority. I don't fight against it, but I'm not a fan of it either in all respects. But yes, people chase power because they have a couple of or all three. They are dangerous. Often when those three are, like I said, always in the limelight and upfront and personal, you need to avoid those dark triads. But power is one of the things, and because that chase for power and in doing the things you have to do to gain this power, I think that's what Thomas Aquinas was getting at, is that it's an impediment to our overall happiness and in pursuit of being happier. And I agree, it's an impediment, because how could you be happy having to... And some would argue that, yes, Warren, because they're narcissists, they are happy denigrating others and belittling people and stepping on people to get what you want. Some would argue that they would be happy, but I think deep down inside at the core, they're not. They're just going through the motions. And then there is pleasure. And not just in the sexual form, but in everything. The extra scoop of ice cream, the mindless scrolling on social media, the tasty, fatty beef on a hot grill on a summer's day that you know you probably shouldn't have. That extra piece of cake. We're humans. Pleasure. We get mad and, hey, I'll just fix that with some binge watching, or I will fix that with some outlandish shopping trip to the mall. But pleasure. And you would say, but wouldn't pleasure fit into having to seek satisfaction and enjoyment? And I would say yes, again, but it's balance, right? It's how much of these things are we willing to indulge in what we think. And I started out by telling you that happiness is not a destination, but a choice, skills, working on our weaknesses really to grow and to be stronger. But yes, pleasure. And then there is the animal instinct that is in us humans, primarily us men, where because of our human condition and us being flawed, temptations do arise and people do fall. And pleasure makes the list, because as soon as you indulge in this pleasure, often, immediately sometimes, you regret it, and then you go back into a state of unhappiness. And the cycle just reverses and repeats itself. It's like rinse, repeat, recycle. Rinse, repeat, recycle. But it's our human condition. But yes, the grass is greener on the other side, right? Envy our neighbors buying that yacht that you can't afford for the pleasure cruise that will turn into a financial nightmare and just keep you up at nights. And I brought in a yacht because there's one off camera pushing out. It's pretty cool too. But yes, pleasure makes the list because, we can indulge and we should, again, with balance. But most of our pleasures leads back to unhappiness. And you say, dang it, man, being happy is hard. Can be, takes work. Like most things that we do in life, it takes work. And then there is having to be like the Joneses. Prestige. Who knows my name? Who knows my status? How did I make my wealth? How come I live here? How come I drive this car? Wait, how come I drive these cars? And correction, how can I live in all these places? Why don't people know me? Prestige. And I'm being coy about it, but it's not really, because it's getting even more dangerous. And back to social media, and I don't mean to pick on social media necessarily, it's just a really good target because I don't think it's going anywhere. But even likes and followers and comments, the positive ones, because these people in the pursuit want it all, we want it all to be just peaches and cream all the time, so the comments better be positive. And who am I influencing? And if I'm not influencing, what is wrong with you? Not looking in the mirror and think maybe it's me. It's what is wrong with you for not liking or commenting positively or sharing. Prestige. And again, in that pursuit, it makes the list, because when it doesn't happen, when these unrealistic dreams and goals and aspirations that we have don't materialize, we just throw our hands up. And I say it's dangerous because when it comes to young people, they go to the ultimate, what they deem to be a solution: suicide. Attempts at suicide, ruining young lives because of materialism, the chase for what happiness is not. But yes, prestige. There's nothing wrong with working hard and being ambitious and making it if you can. And I said earlier that life gets a vote, and often life wins. But in our pursuit to being more genuinely happy, I want to focus on those three core ingredients, and that is purpose. Finding genuine, true purpose. Being grateful every day, for all of the green lights in our lives, because there are a lot of red lights. We all know that there are a lot of red lights, enough red lights, both literally and figuratively. But we need to be grateful for the little green lights, the short ones, during heavy traffic, the ones that by the time you blink and get moving, you're getting yellow. Yeah, be grateful for those too, because you are moving. Be grateful for this, for being able to live in a free country where I can sit by the ocean and record a YouTube video and listen to nature and the obnoxious fighter jets that I actually love, by the way. I'm a fan of flight. It fascinates me. But I apologize on behalf of the Air Force for the noise. But I'm grateful. I'm grateful that I can say that. and be present, genuinely present. You don't have to engage in everything and all things, but be present. And then care on purpose. Care on purpose about yourself, about your community, our shared humanity. Yeah. Because we're not going to get away from having to talk about and deal with money. We're not going to get away from being put in power. And it's such a strong word. It's such a powerful word too, and connotes such rigidity. But you might be in a supervisory role to where you have to make decisions that may come across as you fitting, based on how you do it, of you fitting one of the dark triad traits. And I'm careful about talking about dark triads because, again, like I said earlier, some of the traits can be necessary to survive in today's world. I'm cautious, but I believe so. I believe so. But to talk about money, power, pleasure, and prestige, or I should say we can't get past dealing with and talking about them on our way to being happier. So we just have to find that balance. And I think if we just go back to thinking small in this context, think small. Start with, as Michael Jackson said, I'm starting with the man in the mirror, person in the mirror. Start small and just care on purpose about yourself and about our shared humanity. And I think we truly can be happier, all right? Because happiness is not a destination, but it is a choice to be happier, and we can do it. And if you truly believe that the true currency of our life is our happiness, then I think we can do it, and we should do it, all right? So keep that in mind, and until our next conversation, you be good out there. Take care of yourselves, and we'll talk again soon. I'll see you. Hey, hi there, guys. Warren here. Today I want to talk about happiness. Yes, indeed, happiness. Excuse the noise. I'm down close to the airport and the airbase, but I figured you would enjoy the view. But yes, today I want to talk about happiness, and I want to talk about happiness in